You've seen it happen. Someone you trusted, someone genuinely kind by every measure you had, did something the moment circumstances shifted that you never would have believed possible the week before. Not a stranger, not someone with a history of cruelty, someone good, someone soft-spoken, someone who held the door and remembered your birthday, standing in front of you doing something that didn't match a single thing you thought you knew about them. And the disorienting part isn't what they did, it's the question that followed it home. If someone that good could do that, what does that actually say about goodness? What does it say about everyone else you've quietly decided is safe? You assume character is fixed. Good people stay good. Kind people stay kind. And once someone earns that label in your mind, it hardens into something you stop questioning. You get blindsided when it isn't fixed. The label cracks without warning, usually at the exact moment it mattered most, and you're left standing there trying to reconcile the person you trusted with the person who just showed up instead. And quietly, underneath both of those, you start losing trust in people generally. Not loudly, not all at once, just a slow tightening, a smaller circle, a harder time believing anyone's kindness will survive real pressure. Here's what that's actually been costing you. Not just this one disappointment, painful as it was, it's cost you the ability to read people accurately at all because you keep applying the same broken model, good person, safe forever, and getting blindsided by the same gap between the label and the behavior every single time. Every relationship you've quietly closed yourself off from since then, every bit of warmth you've held back to protect yourself from being wrong again, that adds up into a version of you that trusts less and understands people even less than that. And you're about to find out why this keeps happening. And it starts with an experiment that proved something about ordinary people that most of them never wanted to know about themselves. Here's the forbidden truth nobody around you will say out loud. Human nature was never good or evil by default. It's conditional. In the early 1960s, the psychologist Stanley Milgram ran an experiment that ordinary, decent people still don't want to believe about themselves. Participants were instructed by an authority figure in a lab coat to administer what they believed were increasingly painful electric shocks to another person in the next room, simply because they were told the study required it. Most of them felt uncomfortable. Most of them kept going anyway, past the point where the person on the other side of the wall was screaming, because the responsibility in their minds no longer belonged to them. It belonged to the man in the lab coat. That's not a story about cruel people. It's a story about ordinary people, the kind who hold doors and remember birthdays, discovering that their conscience has a price, and the price is smaller than almost anyone wants to admit. Once you see that, the question stops being who is secretly a bad person and becomes something far more useful. What conditions make good people act like they aren't? You're not the first mind to be disturbed by this, and you're certainly not the first to try to explain it. 350 years before Milgram ever built his experiment, the philosopher Thomas Hobbes reached a similar conclusion by watching civil war tear his own country apart. In Leviathan, he wrote that, without a structure holding self-interest in check, life would be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. He wasn't describing monsters. He was describing what ordinary people default to the moment the structures that usually restrain them, law, authority, social consequence, stop applying. This isn't a modern, cynical take dressed up as psychology. It's a 350-year-old foundational insight arrived at from a completely different direction, and it says the same thing Milgram's lab coat proved centuries later. Remove the structure, and self-interest is what's left standing underneath. Let's start with the pattern sitting underneath everything else you're about to learn. Self-interest isn't the exception hiding beneath someone's politeness. It's the baseline politeness sits on top of. Kindness that costs nothing to give tells you almost nothing about a person because it hasn't been tested against anything yet. The real information only shows up the moment kindness starts costing something. The average mind assumes kindness is unconditional, a fixed trait someone either has or doesn't, independent of circumstance. So when it's freely given, it gets filed away as proof of character, permanent and reliable. No further evidence required. The aware mind reads something different entirely. It asks a quieter, colder question underneath the kindness. What does this currently cost the person giving it? Because the answer to that question predicts far more about what happens later than the kindness itself ever could. Imagine someone doing you a favor easily, warmly, without hesitation for months. Then imagine the exact same favor arriving at a moment that actually costs them something. Their time when they're already stretched thin, their reputation when it's inconvenient to be associated with you, their comfort when helping you means real friction elsewhere. And the favor quietly stops. Not with an argument, not with an explanation. It just stops the moment convenience turned into cost, and you're left wondering what changed, when the honest answer is that nothing changed. You just finally saw the price tag that was always there. Here's the line worth remembering. Cheap kindness tells you nothing, and expensive kindness tells you everything. Weak minds treating every kind gesture as equal proof of character. Strong minds wait to see what a person's kindness survives before they trust it with anything real. Drop. I see the price tag now in the comments if you've ever watched someone's warmth disappear the exact moment it stopped being convenient. Once you stop trusting untested kindness, you have to confront something even more uncomfortable. How easily conscience gets overridden the moment someone else agrees to hold responsibility for the outcome. Milgram's lab coat wasn't just a costume, it was a permission slip, and permission slips like that exist everywhere, wearing far more ordinary disguises than a white coat and a clipboard. The average mind assumes cruelty requires a cruel person underneath it, some inner darkness finally showing through. That assumption feels comforting because it means you'd obviously recognize it coming, and you'd obviously be different. The aware mind knows better. Cruelty doesn't require a cruel person. It only requires the right instruction, delivered by someone who looks like they're allowed to give it, combined with enough diffusion of blame that the person carrying it out never quite has to feel like the author of the harm. Imagine an ordinary employee, someone who's kind to their coworkers, good to their family, being handed an order that's clearly going to hurt someone. They hesitate, they feel the wrongness of it, briefly, honestly, and then they do it anyway because "it's not my call" becomes the sentence that makes the discomfort survivable. The harm still happens. The hands that caused it belong to someone perfectly capable of feeling bad about it, right up until the moment responsibility got handed somewhere else. Here's the line worth keeping. Most harm isn't done by monsters. It's done by people who found somewhere else to put the blame. Weak minds believe they'd recognize cruelty by the person committing it. Strong minds know to watch for the structure that makes cruelty feel like someone else's decision. Drop "it's not my call" in the comments if you've ever watched someone use that exact excuse to do something they clearly knew was wrong. There's a third pattern, and it doesn't even require an authority figure in a lab coat to activate it, just a crowd. Responsibility that feels sharp and personal. When you're the only one who could possibly act, collapses almost instantly the moment it gets shared among a group, quietly divided into pieces so small that no single person ends up holding enough of it to move. The average mind assumes they'd personally intervene, that they're simply not the type of person who watches something wrong unfold and does nothing. That belief feels certain right up until it's tested, because it's built entirely on imagination rather than evidence. The aware mind understands something the research made uncomfortably clear. The presence of other people isn't neutral. It's exactly what predicts inaction, because everyone in that crowd is running the same quiet calculation at once. Surely someone better positioned than me will step in. Imagine a crowd watching something wrong unfold in real time. Not one person in it is cruel. Not one person actually wants the bad outcome. And yet, nobody moves, because each person's responsibility has been so thinly divided among everyone else present that it no longer feels like theirs to carry alone. Diffused enough times, responsibility can vanish completely while a room full of decent people watches it happen. Here's the line that matters. A crowd doesn't multiply the chance someone helps. It divides their responsibility until no one feels it's theirs. Weak minds assume they're the exception standing in that crowd. Strong minds know the only way to actually be the exception is to act like no one else is coming. Drop "I'd be the one who moves" in the comments if you've ever watched a crowd freeze on something you knew someone needed to act on. There's a fourth pattern, and it's less about what people do under pressure and more about what they've been quietly performing the entire time you've known them. The version of someone you meet in public isn't necessarily a lie. It's a managed performance, curated, and maintained the same way any performance is, and the sociologist Irving Goffman gave this exact mechanism a name decades ago. The front stage self, built for an audience, distinct from whatever runs backstage once that audience leaves the room. The average mind takes the public performance at face value, treating the polished version as the whole truth simply because it's the only version consistently on display. That's a reasonable enough assumption right up until the audience changes and a completely different performance quietly takes over. The aware mind doesn't dismiss the front stage self as fake. It just refuses to treat it as complete. It watches patiently for what happens the instant someone believes no one important is watching anymore. Imagine someone warm and attentive in a crowded room, charming to everyone who matters, generous with their attention. And then imagine the exact same person a moment later, believing themselves unobserved, their posture changing, their tone flattening, their patience for a waiter or a stranger evaporating instantly. That shift isn't a glitch in their character, it's the backstage becoming briefly accidentally visible. And it tells you more in 5 seconds than the front stage performance told you in 5 months. Here's the line worth remembering. You don't learn who someone is from their audience. You learn it from what happens when the audience leaves. Weak minds trust the show because it's the only version they've been shown. Strong minds watch for the exit because that's where the performance ends and the person begins. Drop "I watch the exit" in the comments if you've ever seen someone's whole demeanor shift the second they thought no one important was looking. There's a fifth pattern, and it's the one tying every other pattern together because it's the one that finally answers the question this entire video started with. Loyalty that has never been tested is not yet proven loyalty. It's just an untested claim, comfortable to believe and completely unverified, sitting in the exact same category as kindness that's never cost anyone anything. The average mind mistakes untested loyalty for the real thing, mostly because untested loyalty is warm, consistent, and easy to feel good about, right up until the moment it's actually asked to hold weight. There's no way to distinguish real loyalty from convenient loyalty without something to test it against. And most people never get that test, or don't recognize it when it finally arrives. The aware mind waits, not cynically, not refusing to accept warmth at face value, but simply reserving full trust until loyalty has been asked to cost something and has paid the price anyway. Imagine a friendship, warm and steady for years, full of support that never once seemed to require effort. And then, imagine the exact moment supporting you stops being convenient when it means an uncomfortable conversation, a real risk, a cost to their own reputation or comfort. Watch how quickly the warmth cools the instant it's actually asked to hold weight. That cooling isn't betrayal arriving out of nowhere. It's the price tag finally becoming visible on something that was never actually tested before. Here's the line that matters most out of everything you've heard tonight. Untested loyalty is a hypothesis, not a fact, and you won't know which one you have until it costs something. Weak minds call it loyalty the moment it feels warm. Strong minds call it loyalty only after it's paid a real price to stay. Drop "I finally saw the cost" in the comments if you've ever watched someone's loyalty cool the instant it stopped being free. So look at what you've actually been learning this whole time. The self-interest sitting quietly beneath kindness that was never tested. The conscience that overrides itself the instant someone else agrees to hold the blame. The responsibility that dissolves the moment it's shared among a crowd. The front stage performance that only tells the truth once the audience leaves the room. And underneath all four, the fifth pattern tying them together, loyalty that was never actually loyalty until it was asked to cost something and paid the price anyway. 5 patterns, 1 truth. This was never about people being secretly evil, hiding some hidden darkness behind a mask of decency. It was about behavior being conditional the entire time. Conditional on incentives, on authority, on audience, on cost. That's why the people who blindsided you never felt like villains beforehand. They weren't performing evil in advance, waiting for their moment. They were ordinary people responding the way most ordinary people respond to conditions you simply hadn't tested yet. And here's what happens the moment that finally changes for you. You stop asking whether someone is secretly good or secretly bad, a question that was never actually answerable in advance. You start reading conditions. Instead, what does this cost them? Who's holding the responsibility? Who's watching? What happens when the audience leaves? Weak minds keep getting blindsided by people they swore they understood completely. That's no longer your pattern. You've seen the mechanism now the way Hobbes saw it 350 years ago, and Milgram proved it in a lab decades later. And a mind that reads conditions instead of trusting fixed character stops being surprised by people at all. So now, 5 patterns, and if you're honest with yourself, you've probably watched at least one of them play out firsthand. The kindness that had a price tag you didn't see until it disappeared. The conscience that found somewhere else to put the blame. The crowd that froze while everyone waited for someone else to move. The front stage performance that changed the instant the audience left. Or the loyalty that only revealed what it actually was once it cost something. Comment right now with which pattern you've witnessed firsthand. Name it. Let it sit there in the comments, not as proof you're cynical, but as proof you finally understand what you were actually watching. If this video finally gave you language for something you felt for years without being able to explain it, subscribe to this channel and turn on the bell, because there's more waiting for minds sharp enough to keep reading conditions instead of characters. You were never a bad judge of character. You were never naive, never too trusting, never careless with who you let close. You were just judging character instead of conditions, treating a fixed label as the whole truth, when the whole truth was never fixed at all. The moment you start reading conditions instead, people stop being able to blindside you because you're no longer surprised by what circumstance was always capable of revealing. You were never a bad judge of character. You were just judging character instead of conditions, instead of